to Wargaming World and to a beautiful day. Here it's the end of March 2021, depends when you're watching this video I suppose. And I thought with something as lovely as today I'd start this video outside and looking forward not only to a good game but a much better year. Now, looking to play a game of Chain of Command, and it's based in May 1940 in Belgium. And it's focused on the Durham Light Infantry and the 31st German Division. Now the campaign itself was written by Tom McKinney and is in the 2014 Too Fat Lardies magazine. It's the summer magazine, and it goes into a great deal of detail in this campaign, and it's really great if you want to pick that up and to try it. The campaign we're going to play here covers the 14th and 15th of May 1940, and it is the bridge covering the Dyle, which is covered by the British 2nd Division, and in particular 6th Brigade and the 2nd Durham Light Infantry. It's been attacked by the 31st German Infantry Division, and the game is covered over an engagement, what will cover the 14th, which includes night action, and the 15th. And the objective, very simply, for the Germans is to take the bridge and to be able to move down the road beyond, and for the British, obviously, is to hold the bridge and potentially undertake a counter-attack. Okay, so now you can see a map. This is where we're fighting for. It's already been fully detailed in the campaign itself. I haven't colour-coded it, but I am going to do something slightly different in terms of how the game is played. So, the 4 red rectangles are potential areas of action on the 14th of May. The British only appear in one of those 4, and you'll see the arrow pointing at it now. Now the British position here is it's the advanced platoon ahead of the bridge, and that's the area where they're going to occupy. In the campaign itself, you can choose, if you're playing 2 players, like this is going to be a solo game, you can choose to have 8 platoons in these different areas, but we're just going to use 4 platoons in total for the British, 6 over the 2 days for the Germans if required. So the objective here is for the Germans to advance, and we're going to roll from 1 to 4 for where the forces move into. So if, for example, we roll a 2, then there's going to be the first engagement with the British platoon there. And as it is in the campaign itself, it will be a probe mission, as it were. If, however, the Germans occupy what will be numbers 1, 3 and 4, it means that they've achieved their original objective. At that point, we'll roll for the British to move from its position to one of the 2 blue rectangles, and from there we'll have a night action. So the idea here is that we should be able to move into these original positions, and then the Germans, if they have achieved their objectives, will move automatically to their second objective, and you'll find that the British other platoons, the remaining 3, again, they're being highlighted now, and they are in that closer position around the bridge. So let's see where these platoons appear, remembering that the British are essentially at 2, and we ignore 5s and 6s. So we've got 1 at 3, 1, 4 and 3, last one also at 4. Now, as a result, it means that we've got the Germans attacking really on the right flank, or their right flank, and so we're going to move our British forces immediately from what was, or what would have been, point 2 to one of the two night attack points. So we need to see left or right. 1, 2, 3 left, and it will be. So we have the British on what is essentially the German left flank for the night attack, and as far as the right flank is concerned, then we do have one platoon advancing to another of the British across the river. So we'll have a look at that. That will be a second game, and the other two platoons are on the right hand side. So we know the format essentially about where the Germans are coming from on the 14th. I'm just taking a look at the campaign itself, and at the sharp end, one of the examples here about how we change a ladder and make it more straightforward. And in reality, this game is splitting into two. So first of all, the way this campaign runs is that we've got the Germans attacking this side on the left hand side. We've had a British movement so that we've got this night attack here. If the British are unsuccessful, they'll retreat to this point here. If the Germans are successful, they'll hold that position, and at the start of May 15th there will be a second platoon that appears as support. But essentially on this side, the left flank for the Germans, it's to hold the two British platoons in order that up here on the right hand side we're going to have an initial attack here with the Germans directly on the British left flank. It'll be supported because they've now taken what will be the night position here. It'll be supported in terms of artillery, and if the British hold them in the first action from this particular platoon, there'll be a further reinforcement and an attack with strength from this position here on the second time. So essentially the game and the command is fallen into two parts. We're going to start here on the left hand side, this sort of this feint, as it were, before we move on to the right hand side. So just concentrating on the left hand side then, this advance will mean that this will be the outpost, this would be the retreat. There's an action here, this is the main defence, and if the two German platoons are successful, that would be the objective. So the campaign will be successful even on the left hand side if they can take, the Germans that is, can take the bridge, which of course is the overall objective. Now this is going to be our first game. It's the paper mill, and that's scenario F on the campaign, if you're having a look at that. And in this particular game, the Germans are going to be attacking from this side across the rise here, and are attacking the British, who will be occupying this built-up area. Need to also mention the objective of the game in isolation is for the Germans to force through this area and take this road at the back there. So where the paper mill is in fact the connection over the canal. So what we're trying to do here, I've sort of shrunk the table to one end. So yeah, the objective here is for the Germans to take this road at the back there, so that they can move through and over the canal, which is just behind it. Now we're going to take up a look at the forces in a moment, but very importantly, this is a night action, so there are some special rules to be used through the game, as well as using flares are going to be used at certain points in order to see how they can engage. And in addition, I'm going to add some additional factors in terms of winning and losing this particular game. Now, taking some new ideas from the actual campaign itself from Tom McKinney, here are some thoughts to add into the game. We're going to have the patrol phase, but at the patrol phase you get to within 6 inches rather than 12 inches of the forces. You've got the jump off points, and they now don't need to be behind cover. When we position them, they are fine to be in the open, as it were. Now, as part of the support options for the British, we're going to add in confusion. So confusion is 1 point in terms of the support options, and when the Germans deploy, a unit comes onto the table. You roll 1d6. On a 1 to 3 on the d6, the unit deploys at a different jump-off point, having become disordered and confused in the dark. On a 4 to 6, the unit deploys as normal. One of the big advantages as well of attacking at night is, in terms of the attacker in particular, it is only close range for firing. So we can use flares to see that we might get better range. However, certainly a good advantage for the Germans. Let's roll for German support, 1d6, and we've got 3 points of support. So, the Germans are made up of a first wave force, so we have a +4 in terms of its composition, and we have 4 squads each with an MG34 with 3 crew, 6 rifles, and a junior leader with a submachine gun. We have our 5cm mortar, and I also mentioned that it can fire an illumination round. We've also got our 2 senior leaders, one with a pistol and one with a submachine gun. So we've also added a flare pistol. That's 1 point. We've got an adjutant, so we can get these senior leaders onto the board as quickly as possible. And finally, we've also got a medic. Right, so we've got the Durham Light Infantry. So we've got regular troops. They're going to be a -1 in terms of its composition, and that means we get 5 extra points in terms of support. The original support roll was a 3 for the Germans, which means we get 1 more, so it's 6 points. 1 point we're going to use in terms of confusion that I've mentioned, and so we're going to spend another 4 points with a Vickers machine gun, and I'm also going to have a medic as well. In terms of the force itself, so we've got our HQ team here, so we've got a senior leader, or 2 senior leaders I should say, one being a sergeant, one with a pistol and one with a rifle. We have our 2-inch mortar, which also will have an illumination round with it. We have our boys team. Now I'm going to keep the boys team, even though the Germans don't have armour. We're not to know that, so I'll need to remove 2 riflemen out of the 3 British sections which we've got, and this is the platoon itself. Platoon's made up of a Bren team, which is 3 rifles. We have 7 riflemen, and we also have an NCO with a rifle. As I say, we've got 3 of these sections, although I'm going to take 2 riflemen out in order to have made up this boys team. And as I say, in terms of our support, we're going to take this confusion point. We're going to have a Vickers machine gun, and we'll also have a medic. So the Germans are attacking from the left-hand side of this table, and a couple of factors to consider as well is that from the mortar we do have this illumination round. It's like a parachute flare, but the British can only fire it once the Germans are engaged, and when the first action takes place, when we roll a 1 or a senior leader can order the mortar to fire, they're going to need to fire, or will fire I should say, in the direction of where that first action takes place, even though it might not necessarily where they would want to fire ultimately. They can only fire it, as I say, once that engagement has taken place. The Germans can fire them whenever they wish. In terms of the game itself, it's a normal engagement in terms of a probe game. However, if the British drop down to 3 on their morale, they will automatically withdraw. We can withdraw anyway earlier in the action in order to move back to our retreat position, which will be the second game. However, as I say, when they get down to 3 in morale, the British will automatically withdraw. Let's roll for force morale, and we've got 9s for each. So it's a probe game, so the Germans get a number free moves to start off with, which is going to be at 3. You get 3 free moves in terms of the patrol phase. Now we're doing the patrol phase, and we've had 3 free moves for the Germans. I use the Fallschirmjäger as my markers. This is a fairly lengthy board, it's over 8 foot long, so I'm allowed to move instead of right at the back here. This is where we've got as our starting position for the Germans. The British, I'm using 4 markers. They start about a foot away from the back. So these are the starting positions, and I like to use the Royal Navy as my markers for the British patrol. Well, that was an extraordinary patrol phase. I started with 3 with the Fallschirmjäger markers because I wanted to advance quickly, but I've actually ended up just using 2 effectively from the British, and it's pinned the Germans more or less to this side. So we can see that the most advanced of the Fallschirmjäger marker is here, but it can't really move because the second marker is just there and is within 6 inches of this British marker, and then the other 2 are over there. Now I did have 2 more British markers there, but they didn't advance any further, so ultimately we don't need to be behind cover when it comes to putting the jump off points. So the jump off points you will see now are one there next to the garage. Second one for the British is here, the advantageous one there at the top of this building. The only thing is that there are no windows on this side, so it can't fire out from there. And the third is in this building, so we could deploy as the British in one of all 3 of those buildings. For the Germans, we're looking, because we've got this as our patrol marker, this is the first jump off point. The second is behind this tree here, and the third and final one is just over here in the middle of this road. Right, so thanks for your patience in deploying this out as a game and understanding where we are with the campaign. So we are over to the first turn, which will be a German roll. So we're about to start. We've got 9 on force morale for both forces. And just before I roll, I'll make reference to why it's called strawberries for elephants. And it's with regards to Captain Richard Annand, the first winner of the Victoria Cross for the British in the Second World War. This isn't a game to replicate that, so I just want to make that point, but its reference is simply with regards to ammunition supplied to him and what was then used, but that's where the reference comes from itself. Again, want to highlight that what we're doing here is doing a war game, but yeah, it is certainly worth giving that point. Okay, so let's start. So German's first roll, a double phase, 2 1s and a 2. The first thing I want to do is to deploy a section from this jump off point. So I need to roll whether I can do, otherwise I have to take it from one of the other jump off points. So 1 2 3, I failed to do so. I do, so I need to test one of the other 2 jump off points. The other 2 are here, so 1 2 3, it'll be right next to the monument. It's a 4, so it's this one. Within 6 inches, that's near enough for this section to be deployed in here. It's not ideal, it's not what I wanted, but they're safe enough in there. Another go with the second section, see if we can get that out there. No, we can't. 1 2 3, we're going to be near to the monument. Yes, we are. Deploying from this jump off point really isn't what I wanted, because we could have British in either of those 2 buildings, in fact any of those 3 in reality, but also in that building at the back there, and more or less anywhere they're going to be deployed is out in the open. Although we do have another phase to go, that's not an ideal setup. Hard choice really, but I've deployed the Germans 6 inches away from that jump off point, and it's going to be, we do have another phase, So my thought process is it's 9 inches to that blue door. If the Germans get 10, 11, 12 on the next move, we can't go at the double because we're not ready, because we're having to go into a building. But if they get 10, 11, 12, that's assuming we get a 2 or a 3 that we can move, then we're going to shut that jump off point at the top. Otherwise, if they're right outside the building, even though it might be within 4 inches, I still think theoretically the British could be upstairs. So yeah, there's the starting point for that. So let's roll for the next phase. So I remove 1 dice because it's second phase, and oh, that's not ideal. Okay, so 2 5s for chain of command dice, and 6 is wasted, and just a senior leader. The reason why it's a problem is that I'd like to bring on the senior leader at this jump off point, but again, he might not do, and if he appears, well, either of the other one, that one, or the one there in the middle, then there's no way we can move this unit forward, and they're somewhat out in the open. So let's have a look. Either 4, 5 or 6. That's a 4. Right, the senior leader appears here, and he's going to order the rifle team and the junior leader to dash to the blue door there and try and get in. So like I say, if we get 10, 11 or 12 on 2d6, it shuts off that jump off point. Okay, so that's 1 command so far. See how far they actually go. Just 6 inches. So I've got 2 more commands. The first is that we're going to put that MG34 team on Overwatch, and looking at the top windows of these buildings. And the third command is that the senior leader is going to fire covering fire up at the top windows there. So essentially it's going to be the top left window of the blue building and the top right window of the green building. So covering fire there, and we're over to the British phase. Okay, so we've got 1 for the chain of command dice, and then we've got 1, 2 and 2 4s. So with the British we have deployed a section with the 2, and with a 1 I've also deployed the medic who's on the stairs there. I've also got a senior leader, and with the 4, with the 3 commands that we have, we're going to order the Bren gun to fire out of the window. It's the one on the right hand side. I'm still going to do a -1 for cover, because I think that would be suitable, and also with the other 2 commands I'm going to have 2 grenades dropped out the window. So let's start there. So with the grenades, let's just avoid a double 1 with each, and that's fine. So the Germans are out in the open, so it's effectively 4 hits. In the open we have, not very effective, we've just got 1 point of shock. The team is firing at this unit. It would normally be a 4, but because we have the covering fire from the senior leader, we're going to say it's a 5. 6 dice needing 5s, and that's 2 hits. In the open we got 1 point of shock. Triggers Overwatch, so the Germans will reply. This time it's 4s, and that's 4 hits in hard cover. So we'll say that the green dice is the Bren team, the rifle team as well there. And we've got 1 point of shock on the rifles and a kill. Leader. No, it isn't. German phase. Wasted 6, but some good numbers there. We've got a 4 and then 3 3s. So, what we're going to do here is that we've got a junior leader at the front, and he's going to take off a point of shock off the unit, and he's actually going to throw a grenade himself up into what is the blue window on the left hand side on the first floor. So that's the 2 commands there. We're going to use the senior leader here, and the senior leader is going to order 2 infantrymen to do the same thing, throw a grenade through that through the window. I think there's only really 2 men who can do it, but actually they'll have used all 3 grenades at that point once they've used them. I'm going to say it's got to be a 4 to get in that window. It's 4 inches away. I'll make it a 5 for one at the back. I think it might be challenging, but either way I'll work that out in a second. that's two of the commands. The third is going to order the machine gun to fire again into the top windows. That leaves me with 2 more 3s. So I'm going to try and do what I did right at the start, which is to bring on another unit at that jump off point there, but we need to roll and see if we can get a 4, 5 and 6 to get them on. Yes, we can. And with the other 3 I'm going to get this unit moving, coming in this direction. Now it's not really doing much good at all, just in that building, and so that will be the end of that phase. But let's roll and see how we go on with grenades and the MG34. Right, the first grenade is the junior leader through the window on the first floor, needing a 4. And yep, that's there. Now the 2 infantrymen behind, perhaps I'll just point that out, it's actually these 2 here, that one and that one, need to do the same. I suppose they might stand back and throw it through the window. 4 might be a little easy, but then again, if it was going to be a 5, I don't think I'd take the risk. So I am going to say 4 and see whether they can do that. So avoid a low roll. Well, either way, it's 8 and 6, so both are fine. So with 3 grenades appearing in the room, it's actually 3 dice each, so therefore it's 9 dice. So it's 3 killed and 2 points of shock. I should have split it because there are 2 teams, but I'll just calculate that. So I should have done that differently, but I've got an equal split of 3 men from the Bren team, 3 from the Rifles. So I'm going to say we'll have a point of shock and a kill for each, and we'll roll to see where the other kill goes. 1, 2, 3 is the Bren team. Yes, it is. 2 men killed in the Bren team, 1 in the Rifle team, 1 point of shock each, unless of course it was a senior leader. 1 to 3 it was. No, it wasn't. I just also need to work out 8 dice for the MG34, and that's 4 hits, so 2 and 2 being the the Bren team, and that's no effect. This unit's going to move 2d6 up along the street here towards the brasserie, and that's 10 inches in total, and so that's where they get to. It's a good move. And finally, over on the other side, the unit which have arrived from that jump off point, moving in this direction. A great phase for the British, so let's see what they get with their roll. It's not great either. The 3 4s might need to bring on a second senior leader, a 2 and a 1. I've going to use some of the dice, but not all. I'm just going to use the 2 here to deploy a section, and we're just going to fire with the Bren team out of this window. It's going to fire at this team here, as is the Bren gun in here. That's still going to fire. We've got our senior leader in here, so with a 4, one of the orders is going to be the Bren team firing. We're going to drop the last grenade that we've got out the window, and he's also going to take a point of shock off the unit, the one that's got 2 shock. Start the grenade, anything but a double 1, that's okay. 2 hits, Germans effectively in the open, and that's 1 killed. The leader, oh yes it is. The leader, what happens to him? He loses 1 command. It's a bad thing. 1, let's see if that is anything. No effect on the morale, just 1 in terms of his command. So first Bren gun at close range, needing 4s this time because it's not being shot at, and 3 hits. Machine gun, and also 3 hits. So it's a single team being hit 6 times in the open, and that looks like we've got 2 kills and 1 point of shock. Leaders with him. Is it him? No, it isn't. No, 2 casualties there, but on 1 point of shock takes it up to 2. The senior leader is still with them, so therefore it's not pinned, and also doesn't break. Phase this time. So lots of options. 3 3s, 4 and a 2. Right, with a 4, I've got the senior leader here. Need to get him out of the firing line of that Bren gun from there, and he's going to order the machine gun team, the 1 man as it is, will take a point of shock off, and then order both the rifle team there and the machine gun into this green building. Okay, here the junior leader is going to order the machine gun team up to the front. We'll roll 1d6 something like 3 or 4 inches we might be able to fire at half effect, otherwise it'll just be at the front of this road. The 3, we're going to move this unit at the double towards the back of that building. It'll take a point of shock for both teams, but we'll take one of them off with the junior leader. A 3 and a 2, so with a 3 I want to bring on another squad here, and then we'll fire at the British in that building up there, but I'll have to roll and see if I can bring him in there. That 4, 5, 6 needed, but it's not. 3, it'll appear at the jump off point furthest away. No, it's the one in the middle, so it'll appear here. Right, this machine gun team is going to move, as I mentioned. I need to roll a 3 or more to be in a decent position to fire, but it only goes 1 inch. How far they've got. Overly cautious. From the rifle team getting into that building, I just need to roll and make sure that these 2 can move a suitable distance. 1 for movement. That's fine. The senior leader is in there now with that unit, and they're going to regroup and see how they can take a couple of the rifles into the machine gun team, but that'll be in a future phase. Unit moving at the double, so that's 3d6, 13 in total, and there is the final squad. So you can see we've got 3 German squads advancing. We've got 1 in the building. We still have a senior leader to come on and indeed a mortar team. As for the British, we have 1 section holding that building there and 1 depleted one holding one here. It has a 3rd section to come on somewhere. We have a jump off point at the back there by the garage, and a Vickers machine gun as well. So it's the end of the German phase. Over to the British. Okay, so 3 2s, a 3 and a 4. Right, I'm going to put the 2 2s together, and we're going to take off the 2 points of shock there, and the senior leader is going to rebuild the Bren team. So we're going to take the 2 rifles to add to the Bren team, so it's back up to 3. The remaining rifles in that other room there, I think that's 4 in total. I'm not too sure actually, in fairness, whether it takes a command per person to do that, but either way, that's where we're going to end up with, so that's all we're going to do there. Over here, I'm going to put this team on Overwatch. I know that I've got the Germans here, and the only way in is through this door behind it, so we could in theory be on Overwatch facing the other way, but in terms of the action it's taking place in this direction, so we'd only really be being realistic, being on Overwatch facing this way. I do have another 4 and a 2, but I'm going to hold that back to see where it's best to deploy them. Again, there's a jump off point by that garage, and the objective ultimately for the Germans is to take the road, so they need to get through that. So yeah, at the moment the British are okay. They're on 9 for their force morale, so we'll pass it back to a German phase. Okay, not a great one. 2 5s, taking the chain of command dice up to 4, then just a 1 and a 2. I'm going to move the machine gun team forward, just the machine gun team, and roll. Just see anything other than a 1, we should be able then to fire at half effect at the British up there. The combined idea is for this unit here to move to the building at the back where there is a door. So we're going to move that unit, might even move them tactically just in case the British then appear, but we'll move those into position so they can attack on subsequent phases. See how far this unit move. They can move 5 inches, so they're in position to fire, and they'll fire at the Bren team in that window, needing 4s to hit, just 4 dice. And that's 3 hits. Hard cover, and so I can select the casualties. So the green is going to be the Bren team, and the 2 black dice is going to be the rifle team. 5 for shock, 6 to kill, and 1 shock for the rifle team. It's going to trigger Overwatch, so I can fire with 2 rifles and the Bren team back at the machine gun team here. That's 5 hits. I'm going to give it soft cover because it's around the corner of the brasserie, but not necessarily hard cover. So it's going to be 4 5 or is shock, 6 to kill, and it only counts as the machine gun team because that's the only unit that can be hit. So actually that's 3 points of shock and 1 kill. The unit is automatically pinned. I'm going to move this 2d6. We lose 1 for the rifle team because they have a point of shock. Let's work out the rifle team. Well, they're only going around the corner, so they're in position, ready to storm the building next phase, but it's the British first. Okay, so 2 1s, a 3 and a 4. Now, the Germans were set up to make this attack. Now, it's unfortunate, in the last phase, the Germans got 2 5s, a 6, a 1 and a 2, because they've only been able to get in that position, and then fortunate for the British for 2 1s, a 3 and a 4, because it now means that I'm going to set up on the final jump-off point the Vickers machine gun, another section, a senior leader and a mortar. Also quite a lot taking place here in terms of teams, so I'll just talk it through. Is that the senior leader is with the Bren team and will train their fire on the machine gun team only. They're able to do so when he uses 2 commands. He'll also order the mortar team to fire. We can then use the junior leader with the 3 to use 5 rounds rapid, so he can add 2 commands in the rifle firing at the Germans, and we also have our Vickers machine gun and the mortar. So 10 dice with the Vickers needing 4s. That's 5 hits. Black dice are the MG team out in the open. We've got 2 killed in the rifles and 1 point of shot. The machine gun team only needing 4s, and that's 3 hits. 1 kill and 1 point of shot. 5 rounds rapid. So we've got 6 rifles plus the junior leader with the rifle, that's 7, and then you get +2 for the commands. This is across all teams at 4s. That looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits. And the machine gun team, which is the green dice. That's going to be 1 kill and 2 points of shock and 2 killed in the rifles. The mortars needing 4s is 1 hit. G team, point of shock. In total, therefore, we've got 6 casualties. We know, therefore, the junior leader has taken a hit, so we'll do that in a second. But we just also need to work out all of the rest of what's gone on here. Now, we share shock, so there is 6 shock across the team with 4 men left, which means it will be pinned, although it won't break. And we have left in the team, we've got 1 person from the machine gun team, 2 in the rifles, and also there's a junior leader, so we need to calculate, actually there'll be 1 man back amongst the group. So it's a junior leader, is the additional man rifles or machine gun? 1, 2, 3, it's rifles. Yes, it is. We know the junior leader has taken a hit, so what's happened to him? He's lost a command. That's a bad thing. 3's a -1, so the German morale will be down to 8. And so that unit is now pinned with a total of 5 men and 6 shock. And unfortunately the commander only has 1 command, so although he might be able to reduce shock, he won't be able to move them in the next phase, so we'd have to hope for the Germans that it was a double phase. So it is the German phase. It isn't a double, unfortunately. 2 4s, 2 3s. 5 takes the chain of command dice to 5. Okay, thought I'd stand back and just take a look at the game. Because I'm playing it solo, sometimes you might think, well, how do you do that where you don't already know what's going to happen? But in truth, it really rolls out in terms of the dice, and you don't have the opportunity realistically to set a plan and just work to it, and that's the beauty of chain of command, I think. As it stands at the moment, we have these 2 German squads. One is looking to try and pin down the British in that central building, although we have another German squad there in that green building that can eventually do the same. So essentially the Germans will then attack down the right hand side, get the cover of these buildings in order ultimately to get to their target, which is the road at the back there. Both sides have taken casualties. British on what is their weaker left flank, and the Germans just took a very heavy hit there. However, The game is fairly evenly balanced, I think. The night element of that hasn't been too bad because the forces have been close to each other. So we'll see how we go on the next German phase. First thing, we've got a 4, and I want to bring on a senior leader in this jump-off point. 4, 5 or 6. 3 comes on furthest away. Yes, right, I've measured between the jump-off point at the top there and the unit here, and it's 15 inches. So, brought the senior leader on 6 inches and is within 9 inches to order that unit to move at the double. I know we're doing it within almost millimetres, but it is within that distance. So that's what we're going to do. That's all we can do with that senior leader. But when he comes on, he's going to shout and order that unit to move at the double. So let's see how far they go. Answer to that is 12 inches. And that's where they get to. They can't be shot at by the British from that blue building because the angle's not right, but they can, of course, be shot at from there. One of the 3s, the junior leader, is going to take off a point of shock with this unit and then order it to fire. Now, the MG34 team has 2 points of shock, so we reduce 1 dice, so it's 7 dice hitting on 4s, and that looks like 2, 4, 5 hits. It's 5 hits, so it's 3 on the rifles, which are the black dice, 2 on the Bren team, and we've got, 1 kill on the Bren team, 1 point of shock on the rifles and the Bren team. Leader? No. Now the other 3, I'm going to take the junior leader here. He's going to order one of the men to fire a smoke grenade in front of his unit so that they can stop getting fired at. So I'm going to say anything other than a double 1, and that's going to be fine. That's fine, and that's where they finish. And finally, with the other 4, I'm going to take the 1 point of shock off. I'm going to form this up as one single unit. There were 2 separate teams, and I'm going to order the machine gun team up to the front there by that window. And a British phase. Double phase, and we've got a 1, a 2 and a 4. Right, with a 4, the senior leader gets the units to move at the double up towards this area, going around that smoke, and I'll also take the 2 points of shock off as well. Distance is only 7 inches. And with the 3, the junior leader is going to take off 1 point of shock and then get the Bren and the 2 rifles to fire, and they're going to fire again at the machine gun team there. Needing 4s, and that's a total of 3 hits. Soft cover, which is just 1 point of shock, but it means that that unit is pinned once again. Second British phase, reduced down to 4 dice. 5 isn't very good, it goes up to 2 on the chain of command dice, 1 and a 4. With a 1, we're going to fire again at that machine gun team. 4s to hit, 1 hit. And a 3 is over here with a 4. The senior leader is going to order the unit to move into attack with 2d6. That's 9 inches. And the British make contact, so I need to work out exactly the dice for each. Conscious that the Germans are also pinned at the moment, and indeed whether they might surrender. Okay, so I'm trying to calculate the numbers starting for the Germans. Okay, now I looked under the pinned rules, and it said actually if you're pinned you can't throw a hand grenade. So in theory I shouldn't have been able to throw a smoke grenade, but that's purely for protection, so I'm not altogether too sure that's right. If I hadn't, the British would have just sat there and fired. But I have done, so I think we shouldn't be so go right to the rules each time. So I'm saying that we threw the smoke grenade for protection, and if I hadn't, I might well have reduced the number of pins. So we're pinned with 6 with 5 men, but had I reduced it to 5, they wouldn't have been pinned, and you'll see how much of an impact that makes on their capability. So I'm going to keep things as they are. the British are attacking, but it's a lot of numbers to think about. So, right at the start, we look at the fact that we've got 4 men, so it's 4 dice. The command capability is just down to 1 for the commander. You then get 10 dice because the difference between the forces is 5, and you get 2d6 for each. The British moved 2d6, so that's another 2, and then we have 2 for a submachine gun, 4 for a light machine gun. However, we need to make some deductions, and that starts with shock. And so we have to reduce by 3 for shock because we've got 6 points of shock. However, that leaves us with 20 dice. But because the unit are pinned, they then have to take away half of the dice, and that leaves us with 10. Let's work out what we get with 10 dice for the Germans. If you get a 6, it is an additional point of shock. 5s and 6s to kill. So the British take 5 casualties with 2 points of shock. The British, on the other hand, have 9 men, and they also have commands for a junior leader, which is 2, and a senior leader, which is 3, so it's a total of 14. 14 dice for the British. And with that, it's 7 casualties and a British victory. British took 5 casualties, so anything but a 6, and it includes one of the leaders. But it is a 6, so the casualties are across the infantry. This is this element of ambiguity where we've got 5 casualties and we need to spread it across the 2 teams. I could do it where I'll have the 2 6s are the 2 Bren team and the 3 are the rifles, but also when I rolled 4 at the start, I would have had 3 commands. I've only used 1 because to go into attack, so that should allow me a command to essentially restructure it in such a way where I would have 2 men in the Bren team getting 1 from the rifles. So essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take 1 man out of the Bren team and 4 out of the rifles at the end of this phase. So for the Germans, we have 7 casualties, which means all 4 men are killed, and that would then leave a remaining 3 across the junior leader. So I think we roll 3 dice for that, and we would take whatever the worst case scenario is. Now the fact that he's already taken 1 wound, unless he's knocked unconscious 3 times, I think he would be killed, but let's just roll 3 dice. Junior leader, what happens to him? He is killed, and that's 2 bad things because we've got junior leader killed and squad wiped out. So junior leader killed, 6, that's at least a -2. Squad wiped out, 4. We'll just check for those 2. So for those 2, it's -2 for each, and that takes the Germans down to 4. So the Germans are down to 4 for morale, and that means down to 4 dice. So 5 takes them up to chain of command dice is 1, and then 2 1s. 2 1s. I'm just going to move this section as far as I can down this road. Probably not at the double, and they go 9 inches. Well, that's as far as they've got. See whether they attack the British next phase, but it is a British phase. Now, although it is a British phase, I'm going to use the chain of command dice. I'm going to interrupt, and I'm going to move this unit into this building. Roll what I think will only really need to be 1d6 to get in and up the stairs and into combat. Right, I only need to use 1d6 here to get in and up the stairs, to get within 4 inches of the British, and therefore it'll get us all into combat. I think it's a bit of a last throw at the dice on this one, but let's see how close we can get in terms of impacting the British to their morale of 3. Another thing as well is you might say, could I do hand granaten here? And I don't think I can because it's one action. That's what the interruption I'm making. So it's not to throw hand grenades. I can just do that movement. Also, we've got 2 points of shock, so therefore you deduct 2 from the movement. So I'm going to do this with 2 dice. So I'm going to roll 2d6 and take 2 away. So they can actually get there. So essentially 5 inches, yes they can. Okay, so calculating what we've got. The Germans have 9 men. The difference in quality of troops is 5, so you get 2d6 for that, so that's 10, so that takes us to 19. You get 2 for the command for the junior leader, so that's 21, and 2 for a submachine gun is 23. Roll this in 2 goes, 5s and 6s, 3 6s. So 3 6s originally, plus another 6 is 9 casualties, including there's 6 additional points of shock. So the British get 7 men, so 7 dice, 3 for a senior leader, 2 for a junior leader, so that takes us to 12. There is 2, because the Germans moved 2d6, and an additional 4, because they have a light machine gun, so you only get that as the defender. So in total of that, you get 18, plus you would get 6 for defending a light cover. So with 18 that gives you 6 additional dice, so the British go to 24, and I'm also going to throw in 1 as well because I should have deducted the Germans by 1 because of shock, so in total that's 25. That's 5 casualties, and another 5 is 10 in total. And so in fact that's a British victory, despite the fact that it's 9 casualties and 10 to the Germans. We'll calculate that in a moment, but what is fairly certain is I think it's going to be the end of this game. So although we know it's a British victory, they have 9 casualties, which is all 9 of the men there, which includes the senior leader and the junior leader. I'm going to ignore the medic, that would be a negative to both sides. So all 7 infantry are killed, but we need to roll for what happens to the junior leader and the senior leader. For what happens to the senior leader, 2, he's knocked unconscious. To the junior leader, he loses a command from a light wound. So I need to roll 3 bad things for the British. We've had a whole section wiped out. We've got a wound to the senior leader and the junior leader. So let's start off with section wiped out. It's a 4, which I think is a minus 2. Wounded. On a 2, I think it's a minus 1. The junior leader wounded. On a 4, I think is a minus 1. Minus 4 in total for the morale. The British are down to 5. So we've taken 10 casualties for the Germans. We know that the junior leader is wounded at least once, and if we roll 1 to 4, it would be twice, which would leave 1 man left with the section. It's a 6, so no, it's not. So what we know is that the junior leader is wounded once, but all 9 of the rest of the squad are killed, so that squad is wiped out. What happens to the junior leader? 2, he's knocked out. To 2 things we've got to work out. It's a bad thing for the junior leader wounded and for the section wiped out. So section wiped out on a 2, I think is a minus 1. Leader wounded on a 4, I think is a minus. No, it's just a minus 1. Should have known that. I think that was the same we had for the British. So therefore, it's minus 2 on morale. The Germans are down to 2. So that's where we finish as we go on to the British phase. The British, as I say, are down to 5 on the morale. Germans on 2. So the game isn't completely over. Although I think both sides are really going to have suffered at the end of this early engagement. And a double phase, and a 4 and 2 1s. With a 1, the medic will work on the senior leader. Senior leader can't do anything for this phase, but it'll take a phase to resuscitate him, as it were, and then see if you can use him in the next phase. With a 1, the Bren team in that window is going to fire at this machine gun again, and at the same target, the senior leader at the back there is going to take off the 2 points of shock and then get the Bren team to fire again at this unit. Now it's pinned, so it's effectively in hard cover. Bren team needing 4s. So in hard cover. And no effect. Again needing 4s. Good grief. Right, so that's 5 hits, all 5s. Okay, and that means there's 1 person killed. The team doesn't break. It's got 3 points of shock, but that's shared across the whole squad, so it's another British phase. Okay, 2 4s, a 3 and a 1. 4 with the senior leader here. He's going to order the senior leader is going to order these 3 men to get out the building. Now it's 4 inches to the front door, And I'm going to say, in order to get to the front door, they need to roll 6 in total, and then whatever else they get out of that. They can move with 2d6, not with 3, can't go out the double. So it's 2d6 there. And one of the other commands is going to order the junior leader to drop a smoke grenade behind them. So essentially what we need to do is, for this to be successful, it needs to be a 7 or higher on the roll, and then just roll for the smoke grenade, but anything other than a double 1. Okay, it's an exercise, but it fails because they don't get outside, so they get downstairs, but they're not out of the building. And that's where they get to, so they're not out the woods. 4, the senior leader is going to order the firing again at this single machine gun there, and is going to also add 1 rifle into that. And with the 3 we're going to do the same here. So the section is going to fire, which is effectively a Bren team and 2 rifles, and we'll also take off a point of shock. Bren team and a rifle first of all, leading 4s. It's 3 hits and 1 kill. Wiped out and about thing, which is a 4, which I think is a -1, and the Germans are down to 1. With that team wiped out, the team in the building will just take off the 2 points of shock. I'm not going to let them fire here because that unit actually hasn't fired in that building, so they don't really know that they're there. So as a consequence, that turns to a German phase. Still 2 dice for the Germans. And a 2 and a 3. 2. This section is going to occupy the brasserie. 3. This is where essentially this game finishes. I'm going to order the junior leader is going to use his 1 command to move out of this building. I'm going to give him 2d6 to do so, and to see whether he can get close enough to the officers trying to get out of that building in order for them to try and engage. First of all, the move into the brasserie, 2d6, 4 inches. The officers, 7 inches. And that's where they've got to. Now, the closest the Germans can get to is here, however it is within 4 inches. So I think, and I'm going to go and have a think about this, so I'm going to pause for a second, is I think realistically is that the 2 British officers and the medic would surrender at this point. I'm not going to do a final fight here because I know that both parties will lose enough morale points for this game to end in a draw. The British do have 7 for its command, and the fact that the Germans have moved 2d6, and indeed they're in a defensive position. So the Germans will take casualties, but also the numbers of Germans attacking, so will the British. So I think we'll end in a little bit more of a civilised manner and say that the British will surrender at that point. Now, because the Germans finish on 0 and the British at the very least it's going to be either a 3 or a 2, I'm going to call this a draw, and so we're going to have some benefits for both parties. Now, in the standard campaign rules that Tom McKinney has put together, the idea is just to play 1 platoon against each other independently in each game, but I'm not going to do that on this occasion. I'm going to allow the British to retreat and to create a second game where a fresh German platoon will attack this reduced British force. And in terms of campaign details, it doesn't really matter with the Germans because this platoon won't reappear, although it took 23 casualties. So just for reference, the British, on the other hand, lost 16 infantry, and also lost a junior leader and senior leader. As a consequence, for the next game when they retreat, it means they're only going to get 4 men back to fight the next action, and if that platoon survives that game, they would get a further 4 back, but that's very unlikely. So just for reference, we get 4 rifles essentially joining the platoon for the retreat game. However, we will only have, I should say, the 1 of the senior leaders. So In terms of overall command, it hasn't really made a great deal of difference either for the battalion HQ, and I'll start with that point on the next game. And just finally, it's for me to say thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you going through the details, and any feedback would be really well received either here on the YouTube channel, or if you want to put some details on the Facebook group, which is Chain of Command France 1940, then that would be ideal, and I can factor some of those thoughts into the next games. But as for now, that's the completed first game, and again, thanks very much for watching. Look forward to speaking to you next time.